In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and beloved Messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. This is the 11th part of a series entitled Discoveries from the Quran. And in this series I show the superiority of the knowledge of Allah, God Almighty, in the last revelation to people, the Quran, over the knowledge of people in all branches of knowledge, and how a believer can be the teacher of others by pondering upon the verses of the Quran. So among the topics of this part is the one you see on the screen, the golden ratio in the Quran and creation. Now, this title stems from the following Quranic verses in chapter 51, verses 20 and 21. This is the translation. And on the earth are signs for those who have faith with certainty. And also in your own selves, will you not then see? So Allah God Almighty is teaching us here that there are signs, that He placed signs in the earth and in our body. And it's noticed here that the succession of these verses, that they came after each other, that after Allah tells us that there are signs in the earth, that He placed signs in the earth, He also told us that in ourselves. So there is a link between the signs that Allah placed in the earth and in ourselves. And you see the wisdom for this in a minute or so. Now, to start with, looking at what signs Allah placed in our body, in the creation of the human body. And this is a very simple exercise. If we locate the center of gravity or center of mass of the human body, and the center of mass is a point where the amount of mass to its left is equal to its right, and the amount of mass above it is equal to one below it. And if we search for this center of mass for the human body, we find it here, about this location right here. So it's about the end of the spine, and if you want just a certain kind of landmark to locate it, if you look at your belly button, if you extend a line to your back, extending a line backward, then somewhere lies on this line, around that location. So here is the center of mass of your body. The amount of mass to the right is equal to the left, and above it is equal to one below it. That's center of mass. And if we do a very simple kind of calculation, if we divide the distance from your belly button to the bottom of your feet, this distance right here, if we divide this distance over the remaining distance from your belly button to the top of your head, this distance right here, so if we divide these two, we get a ratio of 1.618. Let's say 1.6, this ratio. Now, this ratio 1.6 is called in geometry and mathematics the golden ratio. Why? Because it's the best ratio to design structures upon it. So Allah God Almighty created our body based on this ratio. It's the best, meaning that suppose that the distance from your belly button to the bottom of your feet was more than this, more than the ratio of 1.6 to the remaining distance. That will do two things. Firstly, the beauty of your body will be reduced. The beauty of the structure. Secondly, also functional wise, your motion will be unstable. If you have, for example, these ratios are different than 1.6, so it serves two purposes: beauty wise and functional as well. So this is the golden ratio in the human body. Now, also Allah says that there are signs also in the earth. So is there a link between this golden ratio in the human body and the earth? Can we find this golden ratio in the creation of the earth? And the answer is yes. And the key for this is pondering upon verse number 96, of chapter 3 of the Quran, and where Allah says, translation, verily the first house appointed for people was that at Mecca, full of blessing and a guidance for all that exists. So Allah draws our attention to the city of Mecca, where Allah placed the first place of worship for people. So if we go to the world map and look at the dimensions and the location of the city of Mecca, here is the city of Mecca, the location in the world map, And if we do a very simple exercise, we divide the distance of Mecca widthwise, looking at the longitudes. So we have 360 lines widthwise. So if we divide the number of lines from this location, City of Mecca, to the end right here, so we got about 225 lines. And if we divide this by the remaining lines, right, and if we do that, then the ratio would be 1.6. So glory be to Allah God Almighty is the same ratio that you find the human body. If you measure the distance from the center of mass of the body to the end of the body, and from center of mass to the top of the head, the same ratio that you find here when you divide the distance of Mecca to the end of the map to the other distance. Also, if you go height-wise, if you divide the number of lines from Mecca to this location right here, this distance, and if you divide it by the remaining distance, this one, you get the ratio of 1.6 as well. So it's 1.6 width-wise and height-wise, the location of Mecca. So we see, brothers and sisters, a perfect match between the ratios that Allah placed in the earth and human body. And what is the wisdom behind this? Now let's go back a little bit and see what's the wisdom that Allah placed the same ratios in the earth and in our body. Now the wisdom is that it's out of mercy, because there are on earth now more than 5 billion people that they believe that there is a creator who created their body, but they don't believe that this creator sent down the Quran. Now when Allah shows you this sign in your body and in the earth, and as we will see in the Quran, then you be rest assured that the one who sent down the Quran is the one who created the earth and the one who created our body, Allah God Almighty. So let's search for this ratio in the Quran. Can we find it in the Quran? The answer is yes. So if we go to the same verse that the location of Mecca was pointed out, verse number 96 of chapter 3 of the Quran, then if we take the length of the verse in Arabic, here is the verse in Arabic, and if we divide the length of the verse until the word Mecca, the end of the word Mecca, we find that the number of letters is 29 letters until the end of the word Mecca in Arabic. And if we divide this by the remaining letters of the verse, it's like a distance of the verse, looking at where Mecca is located in the verse, dividing these distances, so we have 29 over 18, the answer is 1.6. So we find this ratio in our body, in the earth, and in the Quran. And again, the wisdom is Allah is showing us a great sign here that Allah, the creator who sent down the Quran, is the creator who created the earth and our body, such that people might realize that the Quran is the truth and they will become Muslims. So Allah is showing you this great sign in the earth and in your body and in the Quran, such that you would realize that this is the truth. So as I said, there is a perfect match between the ratios in our body and in the earth, as well as in the Quran. The ratio is found there as well. Now, we saw the sign, we understood the wisdom. Now let's go to the practical applications. How to apply this ratio in practice. Going back to the human body, if we look at our face, you can think of your face like a white piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, a paper with nothing written on it. Let's think it that way. And Allah wants to place elements in the face: your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. Now what is the best ratio that for the dimensions of the face, such that these elements are beautiful to look at, and functional wise they don't interfere with each other, meaning that your mouth doesn't interfere with the function of your nose, and your nose doesn't interfere with the function of your eyes? What's the best ratio? Of course it should be 1.6. So if we look at our face, so if you divide your face length or your height of your face, this one right here, by the width of your face, you find the ratio to be 1.6 as well. So the practical applications of this, that if, for example, you have a white piece of paper, or you have like a a space you want to fill with elements, the best ratio to use for the width and the length for this ratio, the division between the length and the width, should be 1.6. And no wonder that people nowadays, they are designing web pages, because a web page is a blank space. You need to put, for example, videos, photos, text. They found that the best ratio for the web page, the best ratio, the width to the length, should be 1.6. To have a web page which is beautiful to look at, and functional wise, they don't interfere, like they don't crowd each other, the elements. Also, no wonder that the kind of the most famous dimensions for paper that we use is the A4 paper. And if you look at the dimensions of the paper, the height and the width or the length of the width, you see that the ratio is about 1.6. It's the most beautiful paper, as well as the most functional as well. So you can see the practical application of this great sign that Allah shows us in the Quran. Also, if you look at other applications, robots. Now the arms of the robots, people have tried for many years to find the optimal ratio between the length of the two arms of the robot. So here we have the first arm and the second arm. Now after years of trial and error, they found that the best functional ratio between the two arms should be 1.6. Another example, in TVs, if you remember old TVs and old computer monitors, they used to be like a square, the ratio of 1:1 from the width to the length, or the length to width. Nowadays, the high definition TVs will give you the most beautiful picture and functional wise the best. If you look at the ratio between the width of the high definition TV and the height, you find it to be 1.6. One resolution, for example, is 1280 by 800. If you divide these two numbers, you find the ratio is 1.6. So you can see the practical applications of this great sign that Allah Almighty placed in our body and in the earth and the Quran. And to know more details about this topic, please visit my website at www.quran-miracle.com. This is the website, and you can email me at zaidquran@gmail.com. And may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all.